And we are pleased to present to you three men, Sasam, we call them in Garifuna, Sasam, men of all men. And this segment we are showcasing the leaders of the Wanaragua, Wanaragua competition. These men have been very instrumental in bringing the Wanaragua dance to its decency. And so we are pleased to have with us Baba Eroy Cayetano, Canon Jerris Valentine, and one of the former mayors of this beautiful town, Mr. Cassian Nunez. And Mr. Cassian, you know this is her name, right? Nunez. Like Gwen Nunez. So, and he can boast because his grandson, you know, Bivari, that's right, brought glory to Belize, his family, and the Nunez clan. So as I said, we are here to talk about Habinaha Wanaragua. Mabriga Nani Nugusini Niawiten Mabriga. First, we want to bring the competition into perspective along with your role. How did this competition come about? Babakai?
There had been an interest in documenting Wanaragua, specifically the steps, the Wanaragua steps, because we believe that there are those of us who believe that it could be elevated to a science, that you could identify discrete Wanaragua steps. And there was actually a project that was written to do just that. It involved my brother Marion and myself, and some students who were doing a semester abroad program at Jaguar Creek. And it was submitted to the U.S. Embassy. And we were disappointed that it was not approved. At the same time, we also noticed that there was a deterioration in the quality of the Wanaragua, and that something needed to be done. So I approached my good friends, first Canon Valentine. At that time, he was the pastor in charge of Christ the King Church. And I approached him because he's a Wanaragua aficionado, Wanaragua leader, one of the successors of the late great Max Garcia. While I, on the other hand, cannot even dance the first step with a Wanaragua. I see myself as a critic who can't do what he criticizes.
Cheerleader.
Right. And in our conversation, he thought it was, he concluded that it was a great idea. He endorsed it. And we began to strategize and think about who we might invite to lead this effort. And so we reached out to our brother Cassian Nunez and people like John Weil, the late John Weil, and some others. But it was Mr. Cassian Nunez who agreed to join us, and so we became the founders of this, what came to be known as Habinaha Wanaragua. We had some ups and downs along the way because we had to get the Wanaragua dancers involved. And there were times when we felt that we probably needed to abandon the effort, but in the end it happened. So in response to your question, that is how the idea came about.
Okay. Jeremy. Canon Val, how did the group strategize to mobilize the different camps? How the idea of the camps came about? That's the first thing too. Instead of individuals, why the idea of the camps?
Well, before I go into that, I think I need to make mention that when I left, the last time Nabinaha Wanaragua, the last time I danced was 1988. And I was still Diare Arunai.
Diare Arunai.
Yes.
Kalila Bini.
Arunai Lum Diare. I was the Bankwata for Diare.
6th of January.
Uh-huh. And when I left, there was a standard that we had. On my return, about 20 years later, the Wanaragua had gone down to almost deterioration. The dancing was sloppy and filthy.
The groups.
The dress was not uniform. I'm not used to that at all. There was no coordination of who is who. And I told Roy, I went to Roy and I said, Magura Sutna Labale. There was once they came to dance for me at my house. I had to stop them and ask them to leave. I felt so bad. So I went to Roy and I said, this is the situation. I'm not happy at all about Wanaragua. And I think that was when we decided we better do something about it. And we got in Mr. Nunez to assist. And that was the group, that was the committee until we got some others to join us.
It was a three-man committee.
Until we got somebody else
originally
to join us. Yes, but we are the
founders.
Yeah. And I don't know, but the auditorium is going to be full of people to watch Habinaha Wanaragua. But you go down the street, hardly anybody there watching Wanaragua. And I think that the people prefer to see decency, organization, than to see
Shafi.
And I don't understand, because Charika now is terrible, as far as I'm concerned. And they still attract a lot of dundu. Anyway,
the idea of getting it.
that was not easy. Getting the people to be part of a group, we found it very difficult. But like Roy said, they understood eventually what we wanted, and we had to explain, and we had to go to them, and we had to explain, and we had to go to them, and we had to explain, and eventually it happened.
So, on the idea of the camps instead of individuals.
That is where the camps originated, with the individuals that we spoke to.
Oh, they are the ones who brought the camps. Okay.
Yes. Laura Badnali for right now.
Oh, okay.
And if I may add to that, in our discussions, we concluded that the idea of the camp was not really something new, that it had existed before at Brother Cassian.
Yes.
Because prior to the Wanaragua season, the drums would sound at at the homes of the particular leaders, and followers would come and they would practice, and they coalesced around that leader. So there were established groups. They may not have been called camps, but essentially that's what they were. And we saw a parallel between that arrangement and the kind of camps that you have in Carnival, for instance. So we were not simply taking something from Carnival and imposing it on our culture, but rather identifying something that already existed, and that could be compared to what happens in Carnival. And that it could be a venue, a location for instruction, for preparation, for the making of the materials. And we even saw economic potential in it, because if people learned in the context of the camps how to make Wanaragua, how to make crowns, how to dress properly for Wanaragua. They could even use those things as a means for economic development, produce things that they could sell, items that they could sell.
Roy was very insistent on that, except that we didn't quite get it off the ground, but Roy was really pushing it.
That economic gain in the
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, in our the first iterations of Habina Wanaragua, we had events like the launch, and in the launch we actually set up tents for the camps. And the idea was that they could bring the materials for sale, to exhibit and to sell. That in the various camps, tents, the physical tents that were set up for them, they could be seen as a group. And for the competition, for the purpose of the competition, competing groups.
Okay. Jeremy. Mr. New?
Yes.
Tell us about the attire. And as the MC, I've noticed that the criteria has not changed because they applied, it doesn't matter what year. So how the criteria came about, and because I know part of that, the dress code is a part of it.
Yeah.
So if you can maybe talk to us about that.
Yeah, well, I joined the group wholeheartedly as a Wanaragua dancer. But when I joined the group, I was already an adult. And we don't know sometimes why things happen as they do. But it seems that the three of us in those days were the right seeds to be planted. You have Canon, who has the history of ministering the word, and that came with discipline. You heard him say that he saw confusion in Wanaragua in those days. It's about 15 years now, isn't it? About 15 years.
That's going to be one of my questions. What year you started?
Yeah, at that time, the Canon being a disciplinarian, you will know that, there was chaos at the house-to-house Wanaragua. And Roy himself, as an able historian in antiquity in the Garifuna interest, and myself, understanding the need to retrieve as much as we can, not only in Wanaragua, but the Garifuna culture itself, became a blend into what became Habina Wanaragua later on. Just to refresh the camp issue, One other ingredient in the camps was to foster discipline to the dancers, and for the dancer to have a connection with the drummer. So it's a practice before the 3 weeks in December. Remember, it's only 3 weeks we're preparing for, and later on we may be talking about spirituality and that connection. But the camp played an important role. As a matter of fact, there was a Camp 6. The camp came from the Camp 6 at the north. There was a famous camp with, what's the name of the Wanaragua. He was the one that, we would go there and practice Wanaragua, but you don't go there with Shafi. Because your boss is there to make sure that you dance well and you mean what you say. That's where the camp came from, when they explored those kind of things.
Let me add, Mr. Nunez, where the discipline was concerned, the Wanaragua, when he comes to dance, goes to the abuti. You just don't come into the ring and start dancing. You go to the abuti. The abuti looks you over. If he is not satisfied, he sends you home.
Just be properly attired.
Inspection.
All right. Then, if he is satisfied with you, he is happy with what he sees, he sends you to the second abuti. And the second abuti take your money because you have to pay to dance.
Oh, so when it's swapped that the dancers didn't pay.
He said, Mafai Hama
Abin
Abinhati. When my donation had to be 25 cents, I was shocked. That's too much money. I paid 15 cents last year. So the assistant, the second abuti, writes down your name and puts the amount of money that you donated. Then you are set.
I'll have to come up to that discussion.
Yeah.
Just
So that is part of the Shafi. That you just come in and you do what you want and nobody says anything.
Yeah. Just to finish up on the idea of the camp, the reason why they practice and did all these things that Canon just mentioned is that on the days of the dances, the abutis are in charge, especially when they are of the young dancers. They want to assure the family that they are safe and that they come home at a regular time. So there is a understanding between them. You go to dance, there's your fee, but you got to follow some rules because the parents know they will be taken care of at the end of the day. I'm not sure about the uniforms, Ms. Gwen, where it started from. But I can give an account of the two types when I was growing up. The Huvi Malad, I think is a tradition from Honduras, and then the tunic type that eventually took place here in Dangriga, in Belize. I'm not sure why the difference is, but I have a feeling that it has to do with law. Because once we established the tunic for us in Dangriga, the police protected the dancers when they go house to house. No traffic can pass while they were dancing. So the ribbons, I think later on, the crown, the Yahweh, maybe later on if we have time we can talk about the symbolic nature of those. But I grew up with the tunic type, right? Yeah.
Canon?
Talking about that, we had to get license because I had to get license for dairy from the police. And Max had to get for first day and Januel the license for New Year's.
I suspect that the reason for that is that, in a way, it is like a procession. And when you have processions, when you have parades, it has to be approved. You use a regular thoroughfare, and traffic might be blocked because you have the dancers walking down the streets, going from house to house.
And we use the whole street.
Yes.
In terms of the dancing, the different styles, because I notice the dancers from Painige, from PG, they bring a dance that I see when I go to Honduras. I sight in Honduras. And here in Belize, I was told that we dance say. So can somebody explain the difference in the dance moves? And I notice that every dancer comes with its own unique sense, but I know they observe like the feet, something with the feet. Who will give us the experience? The dancers?
Well, you want to go? Go ahead.
Okay.
Well, to me, I can never answer that question in a pure sense because it's always evolving. So Wanaragua to me is a pragmatic cultural dance with cyclical evolution. Since we do not exist in a vacuum, therefore there are various historical perspectives about how it came about. Because you can go as far back as Mardi Gras all over the South or West Indies and saw something similar. Way back to Africa, Mali, you can see that. So we don't know how far, the dancing. But we can talk about what we are doing now. And it's part of that evolution that has arrived. And we saw, Canon saw and Roy saw, that beauty can be denigrated if you don't organize it. That's why we wanted to organize it so we can retrieve a type of discipline that the ancestors had. Because in my view, it is not easy to organize the Wanaragua dance. That spirituality deep in it, thinking, how do you get the singers, how do you compose the songs, all that is a big issue. We are just enjoying it. And that is one of the reasons why in those days when you dance house to house, there could be a Wanaragua who just outshines, a great dancer, a poetic dancer. And people want to see that dancer. You go from one house to another, and they follow to see that one dancer. That exists. So on the other side, here we are bringing a message house to house, and there are some people waiting for the message. So this is what makes the culture go on and on and on. And the idea at the time when we were founding the organization of including primary school was a wonderful idea. I think it was Roy or Canon who decided to do that. Because that's part of the unending eternity of Wanaragua, to go back to the youth and bring them back in a certain way. I think we've achieved that. Since we have not been in there for the past 4 or 5 years, I don't know what is happening, but we did achieve that.
You will find that there were individual dancers who did individual things that made it very attractive. I am going to say that I can still remember, I think, when the tremblings, as we used to call it, came into vogue. Everybody does trembling now. At the latter part of my being dancer, I tried it too, but not very well. Gwen, there is a way of dancing. Now, we don't have to go far. Right in St. Bite, I love the way they dance.
Yeah, true.
I can't dance it, but I love the way St. Bite people dance. I love the way they make crowns. I love the way the ribbons are. That's different. I hesitate to talk about and to write about Garifuna spirituality for the same reason people do different things in different places. And it is not wrong, it's only different. All right?
You'll always find variation in anything. But you also find, but I insist, but you'll always find commonalities if you look for those commonalities, and that is what makes the particular phenomenon the same. If you look at language, for instance, there are differences in the way people from different communities speak Garifuna. But it's the same language. And you can find the commonalities. And that is why there is hope for efforts at standardization. This isn't to say that everybody must do it in the same way. We celebrate the variety, the variations that exist, because that adds to the richness. If you look at the attire for Wanaragua, you alluded to the fact that there's a difference between the way dancers in Guatemala, Honduras, and even Punta Gorda, in the way they dress, from the way we normally dress here in Dangriga. But the rules remain the same. There's a crown, there is the attire, that is whether it is a tunic or a gudu or a dress. There are the ribbons, there is the Wanaragua, there is the footwear, there are the socks, you may have gloves. So you can use the same criteria in judging attire. When it comes to the dance, there's a lot of twirling, jumping, leaping, and twirling in the Wanaragua dance in Guatemala, Honduras, and to some extent in Punta Gorda as well.
Does it have a special name?
And when you think about the dress, the gudu, and the way the ribbons are set, it's quite interesting to behold Tachagaro gudu as they leap in the air and turn around, and you see all that twirling, you know? While here you might have a lot of asehani and that kind of thing, but in the final analysis, we can use the same criteria to judge abinahani, because you have pasu, that is discrete dance steps that you can actually identify. There are ideas about how you enter the area of operation, so to speak, that is the stage. Your relationship with the drummer, the dancer's relationship with the drummer, and also the fact that the dancer calls the shots and the drummer responds. So there's the grammar behind the dance that is the same. The grammar applies wherever you might be. So in spite of the variations, the rules remain the same, and the criteria that we put in place for judging can be used can be applied
Across the board.
regardless of where the dancers are from, whatever variation they might prefer, because the rules still apply, the common denominator.
Two things. I remember once, Canon, I don't know where we were, because we're always all over the place, but you were talking about the ribbons, and that's the first time I ever heard about it, the time. The significance of the colors, the onset of the Wanaragua and the farewell. So can you talk to us about that? I remember something you said in terms of when they're starting with the pink and the green, and the array farewell with the black.
The original Christmas colors were either full pink or pink and green. The abuti decides which one it will be. I heard also from Max that there was a brown, but I've never seen the brown. But Max said that there was a brown. Black is always New Year's. Black is always New Year's, and it is saying farewell to the past year, and to anyone who is a Wanaragua and may have died that year.
Oh, so it's also symbolizes a mourning.
Mhm.
Okay.
I am not sure now, but I always maintained that John Lowry was buried on New Year's Day, but I cannot be sure of that anymore.
Who is John Lowry?
He was Wanaragua, he was Abuti for New Year.
North side or south side?
There was no such thing. There was one side Wanaragua when I was well.
This I would not say that south side.
There was a time with the north side. I grew up with the south side was predominantly with the Malad. You know, with the big crown and the dress and so on. I grew up there from the south. On the north side was the traditional, as we know it now. On the north side was good afternoon. On the north side was considered to be the disciplinarian side. Yeah, Max and all those good people. So
Yeah, those good people.
yeah, there was a north side and so
South
that
side.
at the end of the day with what we call alto. You know, the north side finished at the bridge, the south side finished at the bridge, and there was an alto where everybody come together and march to a different bridge.
So when I got in my sensibleness, we used to end by fire station.
Okay.
I remember we used to go there. And I have a question, this mystical question. There was a discussion about feathers on the crown. And because we were talking, I said, okay, maybe we have to just get synthetic feathers that time. And they said, no, it won't be the same, because then you have to get the real feathers, because the real feathers has a spiritual connection. So I don't know if there's a myth or there's truth to that. So you're the expert. Tell us about this feather, the significance of this feather. Can us people go far to get this feather?
We have a problem, especially with feathers. Ladaga against the law, hali. Law sarun tiu kararo. Anything to magarawa, it's against the law. Aba hadeira tau gararawa badar.
Girl, paratila.
Gararawa to tuwi. All right. So, lari gemete liabe liale don lei. Lausian la wasaro gararawa. It puts a problem for us, Lu Wanaragua. The team Hegara also way, Lu Ababa.
What's the purpose of that
Tiugara.
specific bird?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well,
Itagubay.
you use the word mystical.
Mhm.
And that in itself, that in itself raises an issue of belief. Now, we're talking here about, the surface nature of Wanaragua. But there is a mystical side to Wanaragua. For Garifuna, it is influenced, the modern Garifuna is heavily influenced by Christianity. We may talk about that in a later day. But personally, I have arrived at a sober threshold of Garifuna spirituality, not just in Wanaragua, but the whole race, as the foundation of appreciating what the ancestors define as the active soul and the vital spirit of life for the Garifuna. And that vital spirit continues to inspire going up to this day. So that vitality that comes through the race for years and years and years still needs to be discovered. And they are going to go, thank God for them, who are following, pursuing, trying to flesh out, peeling the onion of this information about Garifuna spirituality, so we can tell our own story through our own struggles. Wanaragua is one of those, that depicts some of the spirituality brought by the ancestors, the genius. You see, the drums are three, that's the Trinity type. When you dance, there's three pasu, that's a Trinity type, that's Christianity symbolically. It is done the 3 weeks in December, just like the birth of Christ and all that celebration. So there is a connection, and there is much more to be learned, to be uncovered, by great going to come. And I think that there were legacies to tell our story, to tell our stories through our struggles. This may turn out to be one of the most important things that we can do. So we should not be sitting down and cry and complain about our struggles. We need to tell our stories through our struggles and make it practical. Let our struggles speak for us so that we don't repeat those terrible things again. So that's where the spirituality comes in. What people need to kind of peel that onion more and more.
So, why Tiugara? We don't know. We don't know that. But in my day, it used to be Tiugara. Today, I will not put anything else on my Baba, Louis Tiugara. But maybe not hard.
But don't worry.
I would posit that it is that the feather is probably a throwback to our Amerindian ancestors.
Definitely.
Because I have been to, as you're aware,
That's the same thing they use.
when you think about our sojourns to Santa Rosa in Trinidad, to participate in the celebration of the first peoples there in Arima. There's a lot of feathers in there, and crowns that are similar feathers.
That's true.
And so I think it's an Amerindian.
I'm sure.
It's a throwback to the Amerindians, the Amerindian side of us, Carib Arawa side of us. Yeah. And I've also seen what reminds me of our Yahweh shells on the knees. I don't think you will necessarily find the feathers and the shells in other iterations of Jamkuno, Wanaragua or Jamkuno. But, or if you find it, it might have a similar origin. It would be worth investigating. So we also need to celebrate the Amerindian side of us and to see how it has contributed to what we are, and specifically to Wanaragua. Another thing that I would posit also is that the preference for T.U. Gararawa and the reluctance to adopt artificial feathers is that it has to do with authenticity and our closeness to nature. What artificial wama, and me said artificial wama. We are close to the earth, close to nature. We are a part of the earth, a part of nature, and we would like to retain it that way.
So let me just add this addendum to the crown is called Wababa. Now this is speculation, of course. Wababa is a word in Garifuna. If you, like you would say, Wabuchi, you know Wabuchi as father. But sometimes you can look at Baba, when you hear the word Baba, there's a relationship with Wabuchi or father or holy, kind of a Baba. So when you say Wababa, you know, on the crown, you know, back to spirituality again, you can make some, you know, very distant connection. Similar to the word in the Old Testament, manna, when the Israelis were in the desert, they were fed by manna spiritually. Gainagu has gumana now. What is that remote? You know, there's some issues that need to be talked about as well. Language. Why do we call something that? Is there a meaning to it? And so
Wow.
Roy brought up an interesting point there. Our affinity to our Amerindian ancestry. I don't think we give to any, well, I think we should give more attention to that. Even the very language we speak is Amerindian, some of it.
It is, all of it really, almost all of it.
Okay. So I don't think it should be by passing that we should say we have Amerindian in us. We are Amerindian.
True.
Hence our claim to indigeneity.
That's right.
Huh?
Hence our claim to indigeneity.
Oh.
Well, what a fruitful discussion. But as we wrap, I would want our three honored gentlemen to give us, within their parting shot, how they feel about the growth of their child, which is Habina Wanaragua, and how the name came about. Maybe Babaka you start to see Babaka can answer.
Ledgaroy.
How the name Habina came about, what, tell us how you feel about the growth from when it started in 2010. In 2010.
Yeah.
2010. Remember we were at Wainak. Then there was a time we ended up at Parish Hall, but it wasn't the same at all indoors.
yeah.
And then now
Acoustics
we are at Ecumenical.
is the best one.
So I'll start with Babakari. Tell us about the name, how it came about, and how do you feel about the growth that you've seen over the years?
If you'll give me the liberty, there's something I'd like to,
Oh, sure.
to have us factor in. Even when Cassian made mention of Junior Habinha Wanaragua, from the outset, we considered it very important that the youth be involved because it was a way of ensuring continuity. And so the first year or two, the rules required that there be a junior dancer as a way of ensuring that continuity.
Thanks for that reminder.
Right. And then we decided that we would have a competition for juniors, which eliminated the need for having a junior dancer, requiring a junior dancer in the adult competition. We must give thanks to UNICEF because when we advertised the junior competition, it soon became clear that outfitting a Wanaragua dancer is very expensive, and that it can make unreasonable demands of the parents. It's quite expensive. And so we are grateful to Christine Norton, who was then director of UNICEF, who, when she saw the advertisement, took it upon herself to call us to make an offer to outfit all the children who were going to participate. Also, I think it was Social Security that offered a prize. And that is how we were able to start the junior competition. Now, the participation of the youth is critical because seniors like my colleagues, Canon Valentine and Mr. Nunez, will tell you about the involvement in Wanaragua as children. And that is when they were hooked. That is when they were hooked, because there's something addictive about Wanaragua, isn't it?
True.
And so that they look forward to dressing up and showing off their skills. And even as they age, as they grow older, and hold top-notch positions nationally and international, like Brother Cassian, for instance. And I recall Dr. Roy Lopez. He had a double specialty. He was a doctor of internal medicine and a doctorate in psychiatry. But when that time came, those guys and many, many others look forward to being home, to dress up and dance. The little boy in them came out.
Nowhere else.
And if they had to, and if they couldn't come home clearly in mind, then so Wanaragua is a way of holding our people and tying them to the community. So if we start them right, it is something that they will not be able to get out of the skin and siambe hachularu, because raguan. And that is why it is important to have a junior competition and give the children a chance to participate. And of course it isn't just the boys, because the girls too. Gayusa, right? They learn. So it is something that we need to. So, and you can see it in what has happened. the enthusiasm among the children. The enthusiasm among the children is very, very high. And I believe that we have accomplished our objective where that is concerned. The one objective that I do not think that we have accomplished is to get Wanaragua to Hopkins and Georgetown. We had started, we had tried, but it is something that requires more effort and more help because, like I said, zero to Wanaragua, right? So we need external assistance so that the schools can be assisted. And I believe that if we are persistent, if we make it happen, if we ensure that it happens, and we grow a crop of young people, escuelas, boys and girls who that they will be able to have their own house to house. And once that has happened, it'll sustain itself. There was one year when Georgetown had its own house to house for the first time because I'm a Dulu had the same place in her home. But because of Habina Wanaragua, there was that year, a year or two when they were able to have their own house to house. But it would have required more nurturing for it to continue.
And the name for the name?
Well, we debated it in the steering committee. Different ideas came up, and that is the name that was established. I guess I nominated Habina Wanaragua, Dance Jankuno, Habina Wanaragua, and that is what and that is when we developed the logo as well. And I recall I sent pictures to my son Isani, and he developed in Houston or wherever he happened to be at the time. And he developed the logo, and it was approved by the committee, and it became established. I don't think the name Dance Jankuno has been used. I think it has gone out of existence. But Habina Wanaragua has remained.
Yeah, I am very happy that we embarked on this journey. It has been very fulfilling for me to come and see Habina Wanaragua after struggling with it for so long. I can see the leggery in the dancers. I can see that they enjoy doing what they are doing. One big thing for me about Habina Wanaragua, about the outcome of one aspect of Habina Wanaragua is the drumming. I am so thrilled with so many young people playing drum today. Let me hear, Nabina, you had old people like Hill, you had old people like Walter, you had old people like Luban, you have old people like Bambe. No, Luban Irans was north, Mr. Plastic. Anyway,
That's a nickname.
Luban Irans is his, of course it's his nickname. Okay. My only failure is, my only disappointment is with the singing. The singing is atrocious, horrible. And I wish we could do something about that. Number one, the pronouncement of the words in the songs. Number two, they don't know what they're talking about. Now the Halilwa Hagwa happens to tie in with the little Fresel Nu, Fresel Lafar Nuga. We went to Georgetown one day. As a committee, we went to do a workshop. And I saw this Indian child, Indian young man, with my room love, this my room love, with this drum. About the Naringo, oh, Lanani Natilaw Dangriga. He is bringing it for the Dangriga. Let Nagara go Ligapo. So I am very, very happy with what we did for the drummers. As I said, my disappointment is with the singers.
I think with the singers, like Auntie Lily took her time to teach us the art of calling, you know, but I think that most of the young ones, they don't know they don't sing. They don't know that it's an art. How you know that this song, next song, they want that this song, some of them, there are so many callers that they don't allow the other song to finish. They start the other song, but there's a science to it until they talk me, so that's the way I call. When you don't have patience, I said, when you want to learn the song, you have to make sure about your bagudu. You have to hear it, and when you hear it again, when you know it starts, okay, somebody calls the whole song. Then they go verse by verse. When they call back the whole song, that song finished, new song. But they don't know that part. So
well, all of that is true. But in addition to that, there is also the fact, there is also the erosion in the language.
That's true.
Because there is a relationship between the way you pronounce words in when you speak and the way you pronounce words when you sing. There are the endings of lines, for instance. And if you are not able to pronounce the words because you don't know the words, you don't know what it means, you will not be, it will be very, very difficult. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but it will be very, very difficult to sing those words. Kigberu menefala lida bagambo hadumra hagriya Garifuna la haringe rigi la katel to memorize from Allah, because they don't. There are some things in the language like that don't exist in other languages. For instance, voiceless vowels at the end of words. Sut and sut are different. But non-speakers cannot hear the difference between sut and sut. No? There's a suti without the ending. Dalam ani have a phrase amut. Amet hengu gyon amut. Lada magamu hamuti, the E at the end, because that E at the end is silent. And I think and it's a problem that affects a lot of our musicians, because Maringa di Garifuna Peharamwe and Seguti Hagia, they're lifting up the culture. Sometimes I see dance groups performing close to my wife's house. They are upholding the culture again. There is no emphasis on the language, just the singing and the dancing. When you hear bragadap, then you go so man. But you never got bragadap yet. Lot of lahala chow Kasa ligadi mo losa runo opportunity le lula friend de runo dumure lahala chow around. No? There's an opportunity. We waste opportunities we fail to see the opportunities that we have to introduce language in our efforts, in our work with our groups, with young people. So that is what happened. I think there's a need to, we cannot ignore the language. Our language is dying. There's a lot of erosion happening. It can be reversed, but it requires that we stop pretending that everything is okay.
Okay, I just want to make mention of another thing that people today may not be aware of. There are songs, special songs for special people. In other words, Lichagway Abinat Sum Kate de Lagamba have a special pero Sum Lira Hila. Same way Buroilo depending.
So, Cassian party.
Yeah, well, I appreciate this panel to really talk a little bit about the origins of the Wanaragua. But as you can tell, I like to go deep into the causes of why we do things. But in short, we found Wanaragua at a particular stage in our cycle. If you think back an old Wanaragua dancer could look back at our modern, like 15 years ago and say, what the hell has gone wrong with Wanaragua? 40 years from now, a new generation is going to come up with something different. But it will still exist. We had a good example of it in this pandemic. I believe the Wanaragua, at least a small application, was done virtual. So it seems that there is going to be a continuity of Wanaragua, one way or the other. And this shows me that times are moving and it's not waiting on anybody. But even in the culture, from Yurumein, cell phone, YouTube, Facebook, and even the internet, it's going to be a matter of time before they come up with artificial intelligence. So there could be a robot dancing when they're going in 5 years. The way we're going. And it is interesting. I say that because when we introduced the competition, we had a dual purpose. The first purpose was to dance as genuinely as possible to retrieve the discipline and the way it was. We also talked about worrying. But we want some authenticity, number one. But number two, we want incentive. So we made a competition, $1,000 for the winner. We had one clause in there, and this is the genius aspect of this whole thing. That one clause was, do your imagination, you'll get the highest point, and you will win that $1,000. So I am happy about that, because now if you think about it, you can distinguish the genuine aspect of Wanaragua we can try to hold, and the upcoming modern Wanaragua Garifuna dancer by using their own imagination to win the prize.
Creativity.
Creativity was the word, yes, thank you. The last time I came to the competition, I saw somebody way up on the screen blasting a fire, and I think they won. Who could imagine that? in Wanaragua, 40 years ago. So yeah, it's not far-fetched to see a robot dance in Wanaragua in about 40 years, but it will be a testament to the continuity of what is the same thing over and over and over. It is just cyclical. So our job is to make sure, that it has quality. That is basically our job. I will hand it over to the new generation. So I like what we did. I'm happy with what is happening. I am just sitting back now and observing what the young people are doing and how they're taking it forward.
Well, we want to thank our panelists. Like I said in the beginning, learn men sasang ugin hasubu de gabe ongwa the Wanaragua. The Muslim.
Oh, by the way, there's one.
Yes, sir.
I would like to mention that Canon, when you first began, defined to us that Wanaragua was a male dance. And then we found the dilemma. I think there was a girl in St. Michael who was dressed up as a male and started to dance, and we couldn't tell. So that was one of the things we grappled with in those days. So there's a little gender in Wanaragua right now. Right? There's no longer a male dance. What did you say at that time? Don't tell.
Yeah. And it was a woman in the committee who said no. It's a male dance. Yeah. We are prepared to let it go. But it was a woman, you remember, Canon, who said no. It's a male dance.
I guess they have different roles. Certain things, I believe the roles must be. Well, our time has come to say thank you for this segment. We want to really say ceremony lu babakai, ceremony lu kanan, ceremony lu gali de kashan la. This on behalf of our Paginaha Wanaragua Ecumenical College and St. Vincent and the Grenadines Yurumein project, we want to honor you and applaud your effort in the Wanaragua, Paginaha Wanaragua. Canon, on behalf of the committee, Ecumenical College and St. Vincent and the Grenadines Yurumein project, we want to thank you for all that you do for Garifuna good.
Same.
Mr. Kai, on behalf of St. Vincent Ecumenical College and St. Vincent and the Grenadines Yurumein project, we want to say thank you for all that you do to ensure Garifuna good. So, Kayabi, issue of film, and it could have gone on and on and on, but we have a show to complete, so we want to say thank you, Sarah. That's our
You're welcome.